Okay, we're live. Make sure this is muted. Perfect. Okay. Yay, we did it. Hi, everybody. Tanse, Nito Timtek, Tanis Parenteau, Nitsigasan, Nia Apitawagosis, Sagitawak Nitotin. Hi, everyone on YouTube. My name is Tanis Parenteau. I'm a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta from Region 6 in Peace River. I am zooming in from the Mannahatta, the island of the Lenape, here in Hell's Kitchen, around the corner from Ryan, who's in the box beside me in my view. I'm the events and media manager at the American Indian Community House, and I'm here to welcome everyone to the Soledad post-show Q&A, discussion, hangout, party, congratulations. We have the entire cast here and the playwright and the director, and I'm going to pass it on to my colleague, Emily. You can introduce yourself and then we'll hand it over to Ryan.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Hawe, Emily Preis, Jaje Aberdeen. Hello, my name's Emily. I'm a citizen of the Osage Nation. What an incredible honor to be sitting with these people here. I remember when we actually filmed this back on the week of March 8th. And so it's been a journey to get to where we are tonight. So I'm so excited to hear what everyone has to say. And I'll pass it over to the director, Opalanietet. Thank you so much.
Wanishi, Emily. And Kwamkamel Muhemo, I am Ryan Opalanietet. I'm a member of the Nanakoke Lenni Lenape tribal nation. I'm a member of the American Indian Community House, as well as founder and artistic director of Eagle Project. And yes, I'm the proud director of Soledad. And it was such a pleasure and an honor to direct this beautiful, really beautiful story. And yes, I'm coming to you from the 43rd Street, a couple of blocks from Tanis here on the west side of Mannahatta, the famous Lenape Island. So yes, I'd just like to pass it around to our playwright and cast and have them introduce themselves. Carolyn, please take it away.
Thank you, Opalanietet. Halito Chimichagma. My name is Carolyn Dunn. I'm here in Norman, Oklahoma, the home of the absentee Shawnee, amongst many other nations, original home of the Kiowa and Comanches. And I'm here with my Kiowa family. They're all having dinner in the other room. and very, very excited and so thrilled with just how everything has gone. And so big yakoke, big hiwu, big mwah, hugs and kisses, hearts to the cast and the crew for making this happen. So do I hand it off, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Pass it off to someone else.
I am going to, since I'm hanging out with Matt Cross's family, I'm going to pass it over to Matt Cross.
Hello, Kion de Batsan. My name is Matt C. Cross. I am a Kiowa actor currently in Oklahoma City, but I was up in New York before the whole world-ending thing. And yes, Oklahoma is traditionally home to very many various different nations, and at one point was Indian territory. So yeah. Anyways, I played Alex Rivera in the show. And I would like to pass it on to my co-star, Jolie.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Hi, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Jolie Cloutier. I'm a member of the Onondaga Nation, and I was lucky enough to get to play the role of Soledad, aka my girl, Sunny Sixkiller. The whole thing was super cool. I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. But first, I would like to introduce my on-stage mother, Sarah.
Thanks, Jolie. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah. I played Dora. I am from the Spokane tribe in Washington State. I've been in New York for about 8 years, going on 8 years now. And this is my first production with American Indian Community House. So I'm super honored and feel incredibly lucky that not only to work with this particular group of people, but also that we were able to film and do this piece in person, which was lovely and amazing. So thank you for having me and everybody from AICH. And I feel overwhelmed right now because like I'm like I haven't seen these people in like a month, and you feel like very close in a very short amount of time, and then all of a sudden we're all over the world again. So it's so lovely to see everybody. I will hand it over to Matt Langer.
Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Matt Langer. I played Thomas Sixkiller. I'm a citizen of the Standing Buffalo Dakota Nation in Saskatchewan. Sorry, but I'm from Toronto. And yeah, it was a great honor to portray such a high achieving First Nations Native American character. And yeah, it was such a collision course and crash course in how to produce a play in like a week. So, but it was great. It was great fun to work with all these wonderful actors, and everybody was a good sport, and we came together, to make it happen the best way possible. And yeah, it was just it was good to work with all you fine people, and yeah, I kind of miss it. So that's me.
Wonderful. And so I just have some questions for our discussion and Q&A this evening, and I just like to start with our playwright Carolyn. Would you mind sharing with us and our audience this evening some aspects of the real story that this play is based off of?
Ooh, wow, there's a lot of aspects of the story, and it's funny because I also, my day job is a professor of playwriting. And so, and I always tell my students, there's so much of ourselves that we put into, and especially there's so much of myself. So, so really, what this and how this play came about is that I was just, I'm even though I live in Oklahoma, I'm from, two of my tribes are Oklahoma related. And I wrote this play, started it when I lived in California. So there's so much of, so much little bits of Oklahoma, little bits of California in there. And I really wanted to talk about, really about loss and grieving of this family. And really, at the heart of it was just love that the characters all had for each other. And so it was really important to me to kind of tell a story from a California perspective, from a California Indian perspective, but at the same time, still have, the little bits and pieces of Oklahoma in there, because we do, move around and are related and end up marrying people from other places. And that really does happen. And so I really wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about, like I said, talking about grieving and loss, and especially with the missing and murdered Indigenous women phenomenon, and really spend time educating and talking to folks about that phenomenon as well. And at the same time, what happens when somebody leaves and they leave, they're gone, but yet they still exist in the lives and in the hearts of their family members. And so that's really what came out of this, and really kind of where I was going with it and why I wrote this play. And I also, of course, so much autobiographical stuff, being, sitting on a very early pioneering women's drum group, and all of these arguments that we would have, and in California, we do it this way, and, how everybody kind of argues back and forth about that. So I feel like that there's a lot of my experiences are in here too. And so it's a little bit autobiographical, but it's also a little bit, just letting these characters live and breathe and take on a life of their own. And so, so that's, I think, where it came from. And it was really, again, a coming of age story, and about how, even though, they have been affected by tragedy, and Dora as a spirit still lives in the house and is very much part of the family. but still the love that a father has for his daughter will heal them, and will heal in the love that Sunny has for Thomas, and a daughter has for her father. It will heal their family as she prepares to start the next phase of her life.
Yeah, that's so true and so critical, like the word healing. I'm sorry?
I said I can hear my fam giggling in the background.
Yeah. The aspect of healing is so important and so true. And we had some discussions about Native theater earlier this week with another organization, and the talk about the nature of healing, how Native theater can heal a community, and as you say, like heal a family, and that's so true. I like to open up the next question to our cast as to would you mind sharing some of your personal connection to some of your characters? And it doesn't have to be any order. We'll just have kind of like a popcorn. Whoever wants to go and can just take space.
Can I go first?
Go for it.
Okay, well, I was immediately drawn to Sunny for a few different reasons. I think, well, also, it's that age is so much fun. Being 17 years old is one of the fondest memories that I had. And when I was 17, I was picking out like what acting schools I wanted to go to, and I was living with my dad. And all of the scenes between Sunny and Thomas, especially the first scene together, was just a regular occurrence of just, what are you doing with your life, kiddo? Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm terrible at math, so that was a very, very common occurrence in the house. And then also that kind of, there's one specific line where I read that line and I was like, well, now I have to just completely embody Sunny, where she's talking to her mother, and she says something about, oh, it's not like I know how to be either. And it was something that I thought I was the only person that thought like that. Like, oh, I don't know what type of space I can fill as like a young Indigenous person. Like I had a small idea of what it meant, but as I grow up, like it makes more and more sense to me. And we really got to watch Sunny grow up. And so the play takes place over like 2 weeks, and how much she grew up in those 2 weeks. Like you really see her at the beginning of the play, like she's a small child, not like a child, she's a teenager, like she's this goofy little teenager. And by the end of it, you really just see like a nice young lady giving a speech at her father's college. And I just thought, like, man, I wish that my story was a little more linear, but we're working on it, All right, I can pass it on to whoever.
Yeah, sure. Whoever would like to go next.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. First, I love all these characters, and I have to say, like, I found myself, I also felt like Sunny was a young version of me, and then I got to grow up and be like Dora. So maybe that's like how Sunny becomes her, so what drew me was really that relationship and parallels in my own life as a younger person. And then now as somebody who, I don't have children myself, but I have a niece that's that age. And I find myself always wanting to like impart my wisdom on her, whether she wants it or not. And she usually doesn't. So it's, so that relationship is what really drew me to Dora, getting to play, a character who's really there to be a nurturer and to be a guide, but also has to be kinds of hands off and like let the course go as it will. And my family originally is from the Spokane Reservation, but my grandfather moved the entire family to California because he was a musician. So some of the places in California that were spoken about too, I was like, okay, I kind of like know these places. And then we moved back to the res, back to Washington. So, and the feeling of in Soledad, there are places where it talks about like, oh, we're California Indians or this or that. And I think that like my connection to an innate understanding of what that means, especially having a family that lived in California and then went back to the reservation. I don't think we were necessarily like every other family on the res, because we had such a different, like living in the city and then moving to the country, but also finding in so many ways that we're all tied together and similar, and all have the same cousins and related to everybody else. So yeah, those were some of the things that drew me to that character. Plus I just thought it was Dora's character specifically was so lyrically written and so beautiful and poetic in the way that she speaks and carries herself. So to have the opportunity to really embody that was a really fun challenge and really interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah. No, please pass it on to one of our gentlemen.
Yeah, I'll pass it to Matt Cross.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Let me see here. I guess one of the ways that I'm most connected with Alex as a character is I find a lot as a Native American in the modern world. Oftentimes, I will have opportunities to let people know about things, or people will come to me asking, particular questions about, different cultures that may or may not be a culture that I'm a member of. Which, I do try to answer as best I can, but fully letting them know that, hey, this is something completely different, or, I only know about this secondhand. The other thing that I guess connect with Alex on a level is kind of pulling out the, old hat here, is back when we originally did this reading up at Yale with the Yale Indigenous Performing Arts program. I had the opportunity to grass dance up there because I am a member of the Thunderbird American Indian Dancers. There we go. Thunderbird American Indian Dancer dance group. And it's actually through them that I learned to do grass dancing. So whenever I was first called on to do the script, it was sort of this happy little serendipitous thing, because I just spent the whole previous year learning how to do this one particular dance that was very integral to the show. And I like to think it went off quite well. But yeah, that's sort of what mainly attracted me to the show and the character. What about you, Matt Langer?
Well, thank you, Matt Cross. I appreciate the call too. I think, the character, like everybody else, is kind of ambivalent about their role in their community, but also very privileged to be able to speak about problems and issues that affect Native communities. And I guess the fact that he's an outspoken advocate for his communities. I was impressed by that, and the fact that he is a lawyer, professor, and respected. It's just like, okay, he's actually somebody, it's not just the problems that you're seeing. But I mean, ultimately, I think the whole shadow of this tragedy that hangs over kind of him as well as his family was something that it's impressive to say the least, if you can manage to channel that degree of like a cloud, because that's something that's if something like that happens to a family, it destroys them. It destroys entire lives and entire communities. And suicide, violence, domestic violence, and violence against Indigenous women is, it's such a such a huge problem that affects Native communities. So it was good to be able to like get on stage and talk about that, and have it not be like an incidental thing. Have it be such a huge aspect of the story, and Dora's continual presence, and I think ultimately like how concerned I am with the welfare of my child, and how seemingly that conflicts with her discovery of who she is as culturally. It is an interesting dilemma, especially for somebody who's well educated and wants to promote and further his culture and his people. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack out of that, and I hope we did service to the work, and we're able to kind of create that world that Carolyn so brought to life in the story. So yeah, it was great.
Wonderful. Yeah, no, so much. And actually, one of your points, Matt, I want to segue. I have a question for Carolyn. In your opinion, do you think we're finally entering a societal atmosphere where more success stories like Soledad are possible, where the personal benefits of kind of rediscovering their culture for themselves can outweigh the dangers of colonial legacy?
That is a really good question. Well, I mean, I hope that we are, and I hope that I hope that we can get to that. I think that maybe, if you think of kind of indigenous communities from North and South America, I think that there is a lot that we don't know, and there's a lot about people's, family pain and intergenerational trauma that we've experienced, and there's reasons why we all behave, the way that we behave. And a lot of it is has to do with our intercultural or intergenerational trauma, and a lot of that. And so I feel like, and I feel like so hopeful about Sunny, and the sense that, as a character, that she is, that she is able to learn about who she is, but yet ironically, her father, who is this professor of, Native American studies, and has never really taught her about her identity, so where she says heritage, and he says, no, it's not your heritage, it's your identity. And I think that lands with her for a while. When you think about it, it's not a heritage. It's not something that you can just take out and, put on and then go home and take it off. It's who you are. And I think that a lot of that, really, really explores, and a lot of it is exploring who she is as she's getting ready to leave home, and as she's getting ready to kind of create this new opportunity for herself, and create this new life for herself. And a lot of times, and Thomas doesn't want her to go for so many reasons, but he's so shut off from her. And so I like to see this as, in addition to her getting to know more about her identity, and getting to know her identity and how it forms who she is, she also gets to know her father so much better. And how, wrapped up in that he is, and how he's tried to, in some ways, shelter her from her mother's tragedy. But yet she still is completely influenced by her mother and her mother's spirit at the same time. And so, and just kind of like the awakening these moments where she hears the Rainbow Bridge story, and she hears that story, and it resonates with her in so many ways, because it's a story of her family, and it's a story of her mother's nation, and therefore, the story of her nation. And I hope that we can just be a little kinder to one another these days. There's a lot of a lot going on in this world, as we all know. And I'm, hoping that, one of the lessons of this is that we can be kinder to one another, and that, our family bonds can help us get through, these difficult times, and, the family and the community connections can help us get through. And I hope I answered the question, because I feel like I was going
No,
all the way
no, you
around.
totally did. And actually, if you don't mind, I have a little bit of a follow-up.
Mhm.
Would you mind clarifying for maybe some of our audience members that may not know, but like sometimes the nuances and differences between heritage and identity, and what may differentiate those two things?
I think, and this is something that I, spent some time thinking about, is that, because a heritage is something, and I think Thomas says this in the play, and I feel like it's something that I've said so many times, that a heritage it's literally something that you can like take off and put away somewhere, and not be part of your everyday life. But your identity is something you can't necessarily take off and put away somewhere, but it is, very much present in our communities and our families, and it's really our identity, and it's really much more of a a sense of the tribal identities, and our communities and our community identities, and all of that. And I feel like that's I feel like when someone, when they refer to it's my heritage, and it almost feels distant, like in the distant past. But if it's your identity, it's yours, and that's who you are, and you are claimed by, you claim it, and your community claims you, right? Your tribe claims you, your family claims you. That it is who you are as a person, not who, things 5 or 6 generations back. That's still who you are. It's not something that's, all these generations behind you. And so that's what I was, trying to get at. It really, what that, the difference between, when you say, oh, when someone says, oh, you're so proud of your heritage, it just doesn't really sit right, because it's not your heritage, it's your identity. It's who you are. All of these folks, all of your ancestors came together to make you in this moment. And that's your identity. All of the people standing behind you, the 5, maybe 5 or 6 generations back, maybe 1 generation back, that's still who you are. And it's not something, it's an object, it's objective. You leave it behind. It's who you are.
And you take that with you wherever you may be.
Go.
Yeah.
Right. California, Oklahoma, you still take it with you wherever you go.
Yeah, all across Turtle Island. Very true. So the next question, I'll open up to our cast members. Will you please share with us some of your process in creating and playing the characters in this piece, and and how that may have been modified in our condensed rehearsal schedule in this COVID, in this atmosphere of COVID. So so how what your process may normally be like, and then how that may have had to been tailored towards this new era that we're in. And this is open to anyone who'd like to share.
So speaking just to the process itself, for those who aren't aware of how the process happened, we had several Zoom virtual rehearsals where we did like our table work and our readings and things. And then when it came time to film, we were in the space for 2 days in the film space, but we had a few in-person rehearsals in a different space before that. So doing COVID testing and all of those things is obviously different. Starting out virtually and just reading in front of a screen without getting up and moving makes everything different as well. So I feel like from the beginning, it was just a completely different process, and so sped up too, as far as like, we have 2 hours on Zoom to read through this play, and do our table work, which for people who aren't familiar with table work, like sometimes you can spend weeks on table work for pieces, and especially a piece like this, like I feel like our conversations about the relationships within the characters and all of those things, like we could have spent so much time, like, you know, we would find ourselves just getting wrapped up in these conversations anyway, and then going, okay, but we also have to create a product now, like we also have to have something to show people. So that whole process was different. And then getting in the space was like a melding of theater meets film. So the way we did it, you know, going in, we were like, are we just going to run this entire play with a camera set up and just run it, and it's filmed? Luckily, we had the opportunity to play around a little bit and do a couple takes of each scene. So hopefully the editors chose like the better of the two, which I'm sure. And so that just the technical aspects of the process were so different because of the time and because of the needs of COVID, and then also testing. And we had a few members who had COVID before, so it was like, are their tests still going to say positive? And if so, how do we get them into the space? Like, how do we do this? Because they don't have it anymore and they're cleared, but like 2 months ago, 3 months ago, they had it. So all of that was very different. And as an actor, I think we like to be very, I guess I should only speak for myself. I can be very self-indulgent in the way that I prepare for a role. And I like to spend a lot of time like with the character and being like, let me feel this, let me put this in, like, what is this? And a lot of that was also very sped up. So it came down to reading the words and just trusting that roadmap, that the words were going to take you where you needed to go within the character without you having to do too much like effort to put something else on, you know. So just really following that roadmap and trusting the instincts, because we didn't have a lot of time to be like, let me try this 87 different ways. It was like, let me do this a few ways, see what instinctually comes out of the work, and like trust that's it, and move on. So yeah, it was fast and it was wild, and it was beautiful too. Like I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you did a great job describing the how the rehearsal process and how sped up everything. It seemed to be condensed into like basically like 4 days of rehearsal and then performance. But yeah, I mean, there was so many new things that were happening, and I almost felt like we were like experiencing, like it was like there was so much happening around it as well. So that was, you know, that was exciting to be like, to have everybody come together, and you really see the when the characters kind of like let it go and just kind of go with their scene. And I thoroughly enjoyed Matt and Jolie's scenes together, because they seem to have like so much fun embodying these characters and their relationship and like how, you know, like just being kids and like kind of like playing together and just being stupid. Like, you know, they really brought that to life. And yeah, I really enjoyed seeing that. You know, I thought sometimes I was like, you know, I can see myself going up on lines at certain points, and I'm like, oh God, that looks terrible. But you know, I think ultimately I was really impressed with the way everybody came together, you know, and it felt like against all odds type of work that happened at it, just kind of marvelously like coming into fruition. And yeah, I was ultimately, I was really proud of the work that everybody did, and how it seemed to be like, Matt coming from Oklahoma, like, and just all these different parts of Indian country as well. Sarah being from Spokane, and me being Dakota, and I guess Jolie, you're like Shoshone and Haudenosaunee. What do you? Yes, Haudenosaunee. Yeah. So I was really, I was really proud of the work that everybody did, and it felt really good. So yeah.
I want to go next. This conversation, it makes me so happy and just so like, oh my God, I can't believe that we put this together. Like the process, let me tell you. I mean, I think when we originally got the email, I counted the weeks of when we literally, the day that we got the email to the day that it said that we would be filming. It was 4.5 weeks. And I think we had a week to just kind of like read over the script and do everything we need to do. And we were so incredibly fortunate to have Carolyn on the Zoom calls with us, literally just giving us every nugget of everything that was in that wonderful brain of hers. And I just have a feeling maybe if Carolyn hadn't been there for those hours, maybe things would have been a little bit different, to just put it really simply. But we were so lucky to have Carolyn to talk to. And I was so nervous when we went into physical rehearsal because I was like, she's not here. I don't know what I was expecting. I don't know if I thought she would be there. But one of my first thoughts when I read the play through the first time originally, knowing how much time we had, the biggest note on Sunny that I took is that this is a very fearless teenage girl. She knows no fear, and she is there, and she is ready to go, and she's ready to do literally anything that she wants to. And if there's a blockage in the way, she goes, why can't I do this? Why aren't we doing this? Why not? Why don't we do this instead? So I just approached the whole thing with that fearlessness and that why not attitude. And I feel like it's definitely there. All right.
Well, for me, it was certainly a nice change after just pretty much a year of, sitting inside and, keeping to myself, working on various little projects, just kind of, working out, reading books, that kinds of stuff. So whenever I finally got, word that we're getting back to work, it was, kind of really interesting. And I know that it was such a short amount of time to work on things, but my only formal training is actually in improv over at what used to be UCB, the Upright Citizens Brigade. So this whole, just kind of throwing getting right into it, it was, for me, kind of, just like, getting right back out there in front of people and one word suggestion and go. So it was really nice that whenever I would make some of those, decisions during rehearsals to like, really push it to 12, just to really get out there to make those strong decisions that everyone else kind of, went with me in their own way and, supported me on that kind of thing. And it was really, really nice to just see everyone commit really just throughout every rehearsal process was really good, just because understandably, we don't necessarily have the time for the nuanced character work, so it's nice to really just kind of hit it as hard as you can.
Yeah, and I, look, as a director, I can certainly, testament to the intensity of the process. I mean, obviously, given the realities of COVID and budget and things like that, we had to make the most of our time, and so yeah, so it was fascinating and different for all of us, and me included, where you have a mixture of both virtual and then in-person rehearsals, and then so having the table work that one would do usually in a rehearsal studio, to do that over Zoom, and if possible, I always want the playwright at the table work. I mean, there's no one else better suited to answer the questions and to basically kind of pick their brain and find out everything about the world that they created, on the page. And so that's how I wanted to have those Zoom rehearsals be all about. And then we had our first well, many of us was our first physical rehearsals since the pandemic began. And I think and it was a balance, given the complexities of the complexities of the relationship and the music and the dance that's involved. I think it was a balance between what Sarah just said, which is basically kind of trusting the words and instinct. And as much as possible, I know in my process, I always want to try to trust the actor's instinct as they are up on the stage and physically feeling what everything's going on. And so I like to see what their instincts are and then kind of mold the scene and the piece ultimately around that. Of course, there are times when time constraints come by, and then we do have to maybe kind of director heavy hand can step in to try to kind of speed things up a little bit. But I think it ultimately is a balance between that and yeah. Oh yes, Tanis, you have to say something.
I just have a question for you, Ryan. While you're sort of on the topic, everyone is talking about their experiences with doing this experiment for the first time. I'd love to hear you, before we move on to another question, talk about your directing experience with this process of directing a play that was videoed, because I don't think a lot of people have ever done that before. So I would just love you to take some time to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was definitely a difference because and a learning experience. I mean, obviously, I, for the most part, was trying to initially start staging it as if we were staging a play in a theater, and so in terms of getting the dimensions of the space that we were doing the play at. And so then, staging it as if we were doing a play, and then, yes, trying to meld that with when the videographer got there, and then modifying some of the staging. And basically, it was kind of a little bit of a dance, I think, as I recall, between the videographer and myself as to, okay, let's modify this staging for the camera. Oh, wait, the camera can move over here for that staging. So it really was kind of a dance doing that. And it was fascinating. It was wonderful watching it today in terms of seeing how the video would zoom out to see the blocking of the full stage, zoom in on different moments, and that was great. So it's a wonderful process that that I hope can be continued in some format. So kind of like I said, it's a testament to everyone in terms of stepping up to the plate and to the moment at hand to help make it work. Nothing good comes easy. I think we can all we can all testify to that. I'd like to let me see. I guess just checking on our time. Carolyn, can you share with us some of the writing and workshop process of Soledad over the years?
Oh yes, thank you. That's a great question. I'm knocking things over. We've had, a few developmental productions, and so the last one was in November of 2019, and it was right before, of course, the pandemic hit, and we were in Minneapolis and had done, it was a staged reading, but we used the space. So it was, even though the actors had memorized lines, we still had scripts in hand, but we were, moving around a little bit more. And that was in like a developmental production of it. That was done with Pangea World Theater in Minneapolis, and a partnership with them and with Safe Harbors Indigenous Collective. And so Muriel Tarrant directed, and also it was one of her late husband's last roles, and so we had so much emotion connected to it, because the last time it had been performed, it was with Kevin in that title, as Thomas in that role. It was first workshopped at Native Voices at the Autry in 2018. And then we were supposed to have a workshop last summer with Oklahoma Indigenous Theater Company, one of our board members back there. And we were supposed to, but of course, because of the pandemic, it didn't happen. And then so and then the reading that Matt mentioned that Matt was a part of, that we had done at the Yale Indigenous Performers Program. And that was a wonderful time also. And so I was really excited about the possibility of doing it. The play is of course, very close to my heart. And we'd had several readings, and it was like, okay, and then we had a developmental production. So now it was like, and then, the pandemic happened and our theaters are all dark. So when Opalanietet and Tanis approached me and said, hey, we have this opportunity and we'd love to do Soledad, I was so excited, but I was terrified, at the same time, because I thought, we're still dark and we still, have to, I wanted to make sure everyone was going to be safe and everybody was going to be healthy. And it was such a short amount of time. So I was amazed at what you all did in that short amount of time. So anyway, so it had, we had gone through probably about, like that first development with the Autry, and then that reading at Yale. And then we did the developmental production with Pangea and Safe Harbors. And then I think Safe Harbors did a reading of it also at their festival in 2020. So right before the pandemic, there was a reading of it. And my only, kind of thing coming into it, or my concern with it, was because I felt like it's so California centric. I mean, it's so much, really ensconced in the land base of Southern California. And we talk about all these Southern, the Southern California place names, the Tongva village sites, which Sarah, you nailed all of those pronunciations. I was like, yeah, she did it. Yay. So excited. Because it is very, like I said, California centric, that how would New York audiences respond to it? And, at the same, how would Minneapolis audiences respond to it? But I think that there's also a lot in there besides the land specific space, that it does translate. And I felt like it, and I'm hoping, and that was a question that I had, does it translate to, because it's very Los Angeles centric, does it translate for a New York audience? And so, that was the question I had, the nervousness that I had going into it. But we'd been through, some good developmental work, and, it changed a little bit over time, but really not much. The basic story is the same.
That's great. No, it's a wonderful story in terms of and legacy of the play, over that time. Well, I think in terms of despite like you said, the play taking place in Southern California, but the idea of heritage and identity that we've talked about, right? I think that's so universal. At least I believe it is for so many Indigenous communities across the hemisphere and the world, right? So I think that's so true. I have time, I think, for two more questions, and this will be the last one for the cast. Do you notice any difference in yourself, whether it be internal or external, when you do native theater as a native artist versus a play that is non-native? Does that question make sense to everyone? Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that correctly, but I don't think there is a correct answer as far as being able to speak to something culturally as important in a way that I think will make sense as an artist. I mean, I think it's important to promote Native American artists in whatever capacity, and I think that if you're in a native play and you're speaking to your cultural history, and maybe you have a sense of it being more important to a certain degree than, if it's non-native theater. But I don't know. That's a really hard question, because I think it depends so much upon the actor as well, because it's like, what are their preferences, and going back to what Carolyn was saying about identity, that's true as far as being an artist is concerned as well. Your identity is wrapped up in so many different things, and that it's important to understand what that means to you, as not just as an actor, but as a human being, because so many people are confused about their identity as it pertains to its cultural influence, because there's so many factors at play that influence your understanding of the self as it relates to your history. So in a lot of ways, especially as a Native person, your identity is influenced by these like mitigating factors that have as much to do with history as they do with your own personality and your own sense of who you are, because of the effects of like historical legacies of trauma and all these influential factors. So I think it's important to let I think the understanding of its relevance in terms of an audience as well as the artist evolve naturally, rather than try and force the sense of personal connection to like the historical kind of context. And I think that those are the interesting stories when it comes to Native people as well, is how has the world affected them as much as how are they affecting and influencing the world. And I think that's why it's important to have these Native productions, because it really gives people a voice, and is representative of something other than watching as on the sidelines. And our stories are important, and especially coming from an oral tradition, it's important to bring those front and center. And I hope that our roles will increase in importance and scope and size, and I have faith that they will.
Yeah, I'd love to speak to that as well, as far as just my own experience in taking on stories, or I think we're all in theater because we're all storytellers in one way or another, and stories are important. And when you're handed a script as an actor, at least for me, it always feels important to get the story right, to use the words to tell the story, to create the vision that the writer had. Like, it's not about you as an actor, it's about being in service to the story and being in service to the art and creating this thing. But I will say, as far as my own experience stepping into Native American pieces, there are a few different things that happen to me when I do them that feel different than other productions. For me, immediately, there's more weight in my heart as far as getting it right, which there may or may not be a right, but something in me says, like, I need to get this right, because I think because there are so few Native American stories that are shared, that it's like, I have to get this right, because I'm not just representing some, I don't want to say generic, because there's no such thing as a generic story, but I'm not representing something outside of myself. I'm representing something that may be the only time somebody sees a Native American story, like, ever. So that holds a lot of weight to me. And And the other thing, I already forgot what I was going to say. But just, the other thing too with Native American stories. So as an actor, when you're handed a script, at least to me, there's a lot of research about where the character came from. And sometimes they say things that you have to dig in and be like, what does that really mean in context of the history of the character, as far as like the family relationship they're speaking about, or any of that stuff. And I always find, because I'm also like Irish Scottish, but I don't always land and connect with those stories immediately. Whereas in Native American stories, I'll read something and I'll just go, yeah, I get that. Like, I don't need to research that. Like, yeah, I get that. And I think it has to do a lot with like what Matt was saying, and also what Carolyn and other people have talked about these generational things that we carry. So there are certain things, especially within this story, that it was like, yeah, I understand that on like a cellular level, that I don't have to think about. It just exists and comes out. And I think for me, that's different than being involved in productions that aren't Native American stories. Like sometimes those stories, I do need to figure out what it feels like, or what it really means to me as a character. Whereas, especially with this piece, there were some things that just immediately, it was like, I understand that, because it's somewhere in my genes, and I know this story, even though it's not mine. It's in a way all of our stories. So that's like the difference to me.
Great, thank you.
For me, because I've been spinning this around for a little bit, I don't have too much experience in pieces that are outside of the Native world. Most of the stuff that I've done obviously has been over Zoom with the Native community, and that's just been a joy all in itself. Is just getting to meet these like really wonderful people, and I've been so lucky to participate in so many just like stories that actually I will sit in my room and read through a few pages and I can feel a very emotional and just grounded reaction. And one thing that I really love to think about is how safe I feel in any sort of Native theater production. And this is a production where I felt so safe and so welcomed, and just to be me. And I was able to take up the space that I did, and I was not apologetic about it. And I took up all the space that I possibly could. And I think if the production had been a little bit, different, and it wasn't, the exact people that we had all together, it's possible that I could have felt a little more diminished, or like, oh, maybe I'll shrink myself a little bit. So I just feel it's simple to say, but I just feel so comfortable in this space being, a young Indian girl. Like I prefer to feel safe in general. And that was something that I unfortunately, I think of as a luxury, but it was one that I just absolutely cherished throughout the entire process. So thank you everybody for just being really, really awesome.
Oh man, I gotta follow that up, and I'm not gonna be nearly as heartfelt. I guess because I have been, kind of thinking about it, and I've noticed that I, in particular, as an actor, engage with Native and non-Native projects pretty much the same. I like to, get in there, really hit things again as hard as I can, push things as much to whatever level that it might be, just so that way, if the director needs to, can say, that's great, but I'd like you to dial it back to, a certain amount. That being said, I have noticed that Native American work and, theater, film, because there is lots of different genres, just like there is all kinds of genres with non-Native work, there's all kinds of genres within Native work. One thing I have noticed, though, even throughout all these different genre differences, is that it has a tendency to be quite multi-layered. There is never just a simple A story. There is always multiple things going on, and there are multiple points of contact within those stories and between characters, and how there's an interesting thing where even if there are two characters who do not speak to each other, do not occupy the space at the same time, yet at the same time, yet they somehow have a odd interaction still, and they still have that on-stage relationship, despite the fact that there is no interaction whatsoever. So that sort of clarity of multi-layeredness is something that I always really enjoy seeing in Native American work.
That's wonderful. Yeah, fantastic. And I just, if we have time, I have one more question for our playwright, and then I'll send it. I'll have a final question for our producers who will close us out for the evening. But yeah. So Carolyn, this being part of the Carnegie Hall's Voices of Hope festival, I just wanted to know if there's any advice that you'd like to share to young women and young men too, who wish to share in the personal revelations and success of Soledad.
Ooh, that is a really good question. The most exciting, it was funny because I texted some family back in Los Angeles, and I said, hey, guess what? We're able to do this, and as part of this festival at Carnegie Hall, and with AICH and Eagle Project and the and the Indigenous Theater Collective, so that has been, pretty exciting. And it's sort of like you as a playwright, once your stuff gets put up in Los Angeles or New York, you're like, okay, I think, yeah, that's like a big deal, and it's a thing. And I still, pinch myself and still go, wow, I mean, that happened. Like, that really happened, and we really did have this show in this, this format. And for me, that was so exciting. I've been writing since I can remember. I remember being, a third grade in my elementary school, and going to the paper cupboard and getting the, that big lined paper when you're learning to write, especially when you're learning cursive. Those of you, back in the day, there was this thing called cursive, and we learned it in third grade in California. Fourth grade, we learned about the missions, but that's a whole other story. And so I would, cut this paper in half, and I would just write stories. And I remember just whatever came to my mind. And so I've always been doing that. And then, and I think I told you all in the cast this too, and I've told my students this before. I said I used to, in middle school, I would write soap operas, and with all of our friends as characters in the soap operas. And I think that's where I kind of learned about dialogue. So I really was a self-taught playwright, self-taught playwright, self-taught poet. I just have kind of done all of this work. And then later in life, I went back and kind of had this, more formal study. But the best thing I can do, and this is what I tell my students, and I tell everybody, and I tell, other playwrights, other poets, other writers, other actors, everybody, I said, the best thing that we can do is this tool from The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, who's, she's non-native, but, has really helped people kind of unblock a lot of their creativity, is just to write. She calls it the morning pages. You just write in your journal for, 4 or 5, or it's supposed to be 2 or 3, but I, of course, an overachiever and had to do, 5 or 6 pages, handwritten, long. And I think about what I'm writing, and I think about the plays, and I really think about the characters, and, what would this character, and I write about the characters, and I, ask myself questions about them. What would they do in this particular situation, and really kind of get to know them better. And then, and I, the other day was laughing with some of my students. I say, it's the Carolyn Dunn School of Playwriting, where you think about it for 6 months and then you write it in 24 hours because you have a deadline, and so, I tend to do that. I tend to really think about stuff for a long time and really think about characters and their interactions with each other and relationships to each other. And then I sit down and actually do the writing of it. And that way it just sort of just comes very naturally. I'm not a, I have other playwright friends who are amazing and do amazing work. Everybody's process is different, but my, and I never thought I would kind of be in this, in this format with these amazing, talented people, bringing the words to life and bringing these stories that I thought about for a long time to life. But I might, and this is what I tell everybody, keep writing, just keep doing it. Take classes if you can. And if you can't take classes, just continue to write and read plays. Read plays, contemporary plays, historical plays, whatever you can. And and as a professor, I assign a lot of reading in my classes and everybody hates me, but because of that. But how else are we supposed to know how to craft stories unless we hear other stories or we're reading other stories? And we learn a lot about the craft when you read other people's work. And so, playwriting classes that I took as an adult and playwriting classes that I teach as an adult, we read and we hear stories and we watch performances because there's a lot you can learn in that moment. And I love hearing from people, talking about their writing process too. So in a nutshell, I guess that's it. Just keep doing it and keep telling stories. We have so many stories. And that's the amazing thing to me, is that suddenly, I feel like Native and Indigenous theater is kind of, making a comeback. I feel like we make comebacks every, 20 or so years. And I think we're in that comeback period. But our stories matter. And even if it's just for us, and even if it's just, getting together, doing table reads or having this opportunity, creating these opportunities for people to share their stories. And there's a handful of Indigenous theater companies in the United States, more in Canada, of course. But I think that the more we create these opportunities, and I think Zoom has been an amazing, say what we will about the kind of the horrors of this last year and the deaths that we've experienced in this last year. But this platform, you're able to get folks together from all over the country. I mean, y'all are in New York, Matt and I are in Indian Territory, so you can get people from everywhere to come together and share the story. So I hope that we continue this part of, our reading and conversations, when we get to somewhat normal again. I think maybe this will be a new normal that we experience, and then just to be able to give people that opportunity.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Carolyn Wanishi. And I will also say that we are working on having New York City also be part of Indian Territory. It's it's coming. To close this out, I have a question for our producers. And look, producers, they're in the production process from the beginning all the way to the end. We don't see them, but they're so integral to this process, and it could not have and would not have been done without them. So I like to throw this last question to both Tanis and Emily, as to their experience and feelings and helping to put together this kind of first in-person play during the COVID pandemic. And thank you, Wanishi, for doing this. Really, thank you for helping to keep our craft alive and thriving during it when many others are not. So I put that question to both of you.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it real quick before I toss it over to you, Tanis. But I Well, this process. So a bit about my background. I've never worked as a producer or an organizer before, only as an actor and as an assistant stage manager. So this process was such a gift. But it reminded me a lot of, I also had another opportunity where I was in Shanghai and I interned with the Shanghai Peking Opera Troupe, and I don't speak any Chinese. This process felt a lot like that, in that I showed up and I was kind of like, what's going on? And then I was Googling on the side. And that's the great thing about like doing this online, is that I could have the Zoom right here and I could kind of be like, what does this mean? What does this mean on the other side? But I'm so grateful that I had such an incredible set of mentors and team members and cast members to work with. The theater space that we worked with here, Art Center, in New York City was incredible. I worked with Iakowi, another amazing producer, to kind of write this COVID plan. And I was like, oh my God, COVID plan, like, I don't know. And so they kind of let me look at theirs and model ours off of theirs. And it just was an incredible learning process that became so sweet when I was kind of like peeking in the room watching you guys film on the last day, because I know the day where we were kind of like blocking while also putting lights up, everyone was just kind of like, oh my god, this is never gonna work. But I remember kind of peeking in on some of those later scenes on the filming day and being like, actually, this is gonna work. We've done something that last night I thought was impossible. So impossible that when I got home and my roommate knew I was upset, so she made me like essentially just tacos, like I spilled some chicken and I started crying, like full on crying, because I just was like, oh my God, this isn't gonna work. And so that just made, and this viewing process as well and hearing from you guys has made this so sweet. And I don't know how any of the real producers like really produce. Because it's crazy. I am so in awe. Tanis, so in awe of you, so in awe of so many people. But it just made it all worth it. So I want to thank you all. Yeah, I learned so much. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
You just kind of do it. You fly by the seat of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
There is no producer university. There is no training. You really, for the most part, from what I know, producers learn on the job. You start, like in film, for example, film and TV, you start as like, maybe if you're going to start at the very beginning, you start as a PA, production assistant. You're there, first one on set at 4 in the morning, and you're the last one to leave, and you're getting paid like $200 for the day for like however long it takes. And then you work your way up, and you learn by watching and being taught on the job. And with this, it's a lot of organizing. And now that everything's virtual, it's a lot of just organizing on the laptop and organizing people. And producing is really just putting the pieces together, all of the pieces together, and all of the people. So it's a lot of moving parts, yes. But as Carolyn mentioned, a silver lining in this horrific time that we're in is that we are able to connect our online native community, our in-person and online. Like, it's always kind of been connected with, like, starting with social media, but now with entertainment and theater and Zoom readings happening on Zoom and other mediums as well, but like online essentially, that I feel like we're just more and more connected, and it's really exciting. And I'm just so beside myself, because I feel like every time this one is extra special, because it's actually like, there's a bit of a disconnect for me because I wasn't there in person, and that was hard not to be there. And then it was hard also to not know exactly how everyone was feeling, what everyone was going through on the days. When it's just Zoom, you're there and everyone's on the screen and you're seeing everybody the whole time. But when it was this in-person thing that I wasn't there for, because everyone out there in YouTube land, I was in Canada still, not in New York. That was a little bit hard. And so as a producer, like, things have to get done, time is money kind of thing, but you're still working with human beings, and you want to make sure that they're okay. And so it was great to have my fellow co-producers, Emily and Iakowi, there, like boots on the ground, to be there with everybody. And I'm amazed that, yeah, like Emily, there were moments where like, I knew this was a huge taking when it was proposed to me to do this event by Iakowi. I thought, I don't know if you know what you're asking me to do, but I felt like, you know, we had the budget, the money to pay people, to hire people to do everything. And I just knew that was my one caveat. It was like my slogan for the whole thing is something's got to give in this process. It's new ground. We are breaking new ground here. That's exciting. And the thing that has to give is time. We don't have a lot of time. So we're going to make it work within the constraints that we have. And I think everybody did a beautiful job. And I'm just so thrilled with how it turned out. And I think that it sets the bar. I think that from what I'm seeing in the industry, you know, with theater right now, with it being so quiet for the last year, and now there are theaters that are pulling old archival footage of shows that they've done and streaming them now as part of their, you know, current season. But they're also thinking of ways to do theater again for audiences that aren't there, and maybe for like one or two if they're allowed to have people in the audience. But it's going to start up again, and it's going to be like this, I believe. And so the fact that we've already done that is incredible. And, you know, this was a non-union project, but we weren't willy-nilly about COVID. You know, we had a COVID protocol. And so we took those standards into account. And I think that is very important. I hope that everyone felt safe. But yeah, I'm like, let's do another one. Yeah, Carolyn, write that res soap opera. We'll do that. Yeah, I'm just pleased, so pleased and so happy. And I think that I'm just watching the video, the editing, like every single person that had their hands in this, I'm just so happy that we could all do this as a team. So thank you. Hi, everybody. So I guess with that, we will end our little Q&A post-show discussion. I could go on and gosh, but it's 9:20 here. So I'm sure I'll be seeing a lot of you again very soon. Congrats again to be on this Carnegie Hall stage somewhat. It's a very important festival, and a big thank you to Carnegie Hall for sponsoring this and for helping get the word out. And so the video will live online for 4 days, and then it will be taken down. This Q&A will be on for as long as necessary. But yeah, I guess that's it. I feel like it's sad to say goodbye, but we'll see you later. Definitely.
Absolutely.
See you all later.
See everyone soon. Thank you, Wanishi.
Good night.